Darcy Pariso. In addition to being an intuitive, a medium, a Reiki master, and a healer, as you know, she's an animal communicator too, an animal intuitive. She channeled St. Francis, the Archangel Gabriel. She's going to be telling us about that. She works particularly with the energies of warmth and compassion. She tells us that people are drawn to her energy. And again, it's going to be very exciting. She's an animal intuitive for Martha Norwalk's Animal World on KKNW 1150 AM in Seattle. And that's a show that's been on for a while. And she'll be telling us about that and what she does there. She provides live animal readings to callers. She also writes a monthly column in the New Spirit Journal. Darcy participates in Intuitive Expos. She'll soon be teaching animal communication classes, and she'll be telling us about that as well. Some of the people that she has studied with in various areas include Polly Klein, Jacqueline Smith, and Marta Williams. And I would like to, at this moment, welcome Darcy Pariso. How are you this evening?
Oh, hi, Rich. How are you?
I'm doing great, and how are you doing?
I'm just great also. I'm happy to be here this evening with you.
We are glad to have you. I was just going over some of your background and your credentials and some of the things you were into, some of the people you studied with. I understand you also studied mediumship under James Van Praagh and Marie Manicheri and Terry Bowen.
Yeah, yes, I did. Yes, and I also attended Arthur Findlay College in London, and that was really exciting for me. I think I went about 2 years ago, about a year and a half ago.
Well, I'm very, very eager for you to tell us all about that, too. So tell us a little about animal communication, and tell us a little what you do with animals.
Okay, well, every call is so unique. I never know what to expect, and I walk away feeling so much compassion. I help animals with trauma, animals that are sheltered, that are lost, and there's a lot of laughter. There's a lot of fun. It's really all over the board. But what I do initially is somebody will contact me. I do my readings over the phone or Skype, and I also go to local intuitive fairs and do readings on site. So during this time, they may send me a picture or just send an email and tell me what the situation is. And then I tune in and I introduce myself to, say it's a cat. I'll tell them who I am and that their animal asked me to, their person asked me to talk to them. And I've never had anyone, not want to communicate. They're usually, very happy to be able to get out what it is that's bothering them or their perspective. So I'll start by asking them, what they want to tell me. And things are not often as they seem, and that's always the interesting thing. It might appear to be a behavioral problem, but actually it turns out that maybe a past life is being touched on, or maybe the cat is angry about something that's happening in the house. Sometimes there will be a call about maybe a cat doing something inappropriate like urination outside of the litter box, and it turns out that they're actually quite angry. And it might be a relationship issue. It could be something else in the house, like an energy. Sometimes there's energies that people bring into the house unbeknownst to them. They may be from visitors or neighborhood homes or animals. So it's all sorts of things.
I understand. You have some animals of your own. You have 2 dogs, Griffin and Combi.
Yes, I do.
And recently, newly crossed over cat, Sammy. I think you have some stories you can tell us about all of them. Could you tell us a little about your animals?
Yes, people tell me that I must have all these situations come up so that it helps me in my own communication as I encounter it with other animals. Well, first of all, where shall I start? My youngest dog, Kobe, is a Havanese, and she's 10. And I was talking to an animal communicator many years ago, probably 7 years ago. And she kept asking me, do you want another dog? And I would say no. And she said, well, there's a dog here that says you do. And I would say no. And she said, well, she keeps pressing that you've talked about it. So I said, well, I'm working, and I really don't want a puppy because I don't have the time to train a puppy. However, I think that my other dog would probably appreciate having a friend. So I have considered it. Well, I learned that many years ago when I lived in Michigan, I had 2 dogs, and I had to give them up when I left to take a traveling job. And the one dog that was with me, Griffin, my King Charles Spaniel, this was his friend. I had these 2 dogs together, so of course they very much wanted to be together again. So Griffin had been with me for maybe 5 years, and Kobe wanted to come back. And so she asked me, what kind of dog do you want? And my daughter and I were on the phone, but we didn't know what to say, so we threw out maybe 5 or 6 different breeds, and Kobe said, no, hip problems, no, I don't want to be that dog or that dog. And finally she agreed that she wanted to be a Havanese. That was her choice. And when I asked, well, how would this happen if she's not a puppy? And they said, well, don't worry, we'll take care of that. How will you find me? And I still was a little baffled and just said, I don't know, the internet. So she said, okay, things will just happen and it'll be fine. So I started looking on the internet for Havanese, and I'm only finding puppies. And finally I said to a breeder in Oregon, I really would like a dog that's 2 or 3 years old, that's already trained and so forth. And she told me that she had a dog that had been shown. She couldn't put her in the ring anymore. She had puppies, and she wasn't getting very much attention anymore with the puppies. And if she found the right home and they had another dog, that she would let her go. And so that's how I came, to come. That's how Kobe came to me once again. But when I asked, I asked the communicator at the time, how will this happen? And she said, well, she's going to find you, and when you find her, let me know. So I called her, and she said, okay, so she's a walk-in. She's going to exchange bodies. The dog that was in the body down in Oregon came into this life with the purpose of being a show dog. It's all she lived for. It's really what she wanted to do. So she was quite unhappy to be bred and to be retired from the ring at such a young age. So that dog was happy to leave and to find another home that would show her. Meantime, Kobe came to me. The communicator also told me that it would take 3 days for Kobe to be fully in her body, and she wouldn't recognize me until she was, till that 3rd day or so. So my daughter and I picked her up in Oregon. We're in the Seattle area, and she really bonded with my daughter, and she growled at me. I don't think she even really liked me. And every day, the same thing, she stayed in her crate. And then on the 3rd morning, I was reading the newspaper, and I looked up, and she had this look on her face, and she ran across the room and jumped in my lap and licked me and licked me and licked me, and she was fully in her body, and she knew who I was. And from that day on, Kobe was in that Havanese body.
Wow, that is fantastic. Tell us a little about Sammy, the tortoiseshell cat that left the airplane in July of 2015.
Okay, well, Sammy, one more thing on Kobe is Kobe told me when she was my dog before, she was a silky terrier and she was 5 pounds. Uh-huh. And now she came into the body of an 18-pound Havanese.
Yes.
And so I felt really bad for her because for a year or more, she was miscalculating distance. She would jump out of the car and slam into the car door, or go to walk outside and then hit the door frame instead of the door. I mean, she couldn't get her body size figured out for a while. So there were just, definitely some trials there for her. So, but on to Sammy, the tortoiseshell cat. We got her when she was 2 years old. We found her in a pet store and adopted her. And she had been rescued from a housing development that was being torn down. And she really bonded with my daughter for about 6 months. And then spring came, and she met some other cats in the neighborhood, and from that point on, she was somewhere between feral and sneaking in the house to eat and looking at us suspiciously. And she just kind of dumbfounded me. I thought, I've never had a cat like this that's on and off, and I couldn't figure her out. I tried to befriend her, and she was just skittish and very different for me. So this was her life for quite a while. And then one night, I would go and get her in the garage. She wouldn't come in the house often, so I would go and find her and make her come in and hold her and pet her, and then she was very affectionate, but then she'd run off again. So one night, she was on my lap, and she ran out into a thunderstorm, which it was lightning and thunder. It was a horrible storm, unlike anything we normally have in Seattle. And we thought, what? Why did she do this? Well, she didn't come home for about 3 days, and we asked neighbors. We called this animal communicator we had worked with back about 7 years ago, and she told us that she saw her locked in a neighbor's garage and gave us some general areas. We passed out flyers, talked to neighbors, and unfortunately it was the week of Thanksgiving, and a lot of people were gone, and we couldn't find her. And we kept looking and looking, and the communicator told us that if we didn't get her back that night, she wasn't going to make it because she was really, really cold, and her life force was leaving. And I couldn't find her that night. And I remember pulling over to the side of the road and just crying, thinking that my cat is on this particular block, somewhere right in this area, and no one is home, and she's going to die, and I can't get to her. So it was really heart-wrenching for us. So we talked to the communicator, and she said, yes, that she had crossed over. She was out of her body. We grieved for her the next few days. And then 3-4 days later, she showed up on Thanksgiving Day. And we were stunned. We were happy to see her, but yet we were very shocked. And when I called the communicator, she said, I've never seen anything like this. So anyway, fast forward some years later, and she came back and she was friendlier and continued to become friendlier. So a couple of years later, I was having an acupuncture appointment, and there were some cats in the room that worked with the acupuncturist, and I was communicating with them while I was on the table, and one of the things that they told me was that they liked my cat. And they said it to me as I was leaving. I didn't quite understand what that meant, but I went up the door, and when I was back home later, I repeated this to my cat, Sammy. And she looked at me like I was clueless and said, which she often did, by the way, Rich. And she said, well, these are the cats that helped her return. She said that when she crossed over, she saw that she wasn't a very loving cat, and so she decided that she was going to come back and start over with a new family and be very different. But she was shown that she had a family that loved her if she would, let us in. And she saw me on the side of the road, crying that I couldn't get to her. So she said that's how she came back, and that she told me about this whole healing network of cats that helped her. They help people and they help other animals. And so that's how she came back. And since then, she was involved with this network of cats healing animals.
Wow.
So, yeah, but then it goes on. So this was several years ago. And then she left us in July. She crossed over right before the 4th of July. But she started sleeping a lot and not eating so much, and I could tell she wasn't doing well. And when I asked her what was going on, she told me that she was helping my Cavalier King Charles, my spaniel named Griffin, and he had some health issues. So she kept saying, I'm helping him, I'm working with him, just give us a little more time. And the next week she got worse. She would eat and go outside and seem to be better, and then she got worse. So I told her that if this continued, I was taking her to the vets. And really, though, what could I say? My cat's working with my dog, and he's sick, and she's a healing cat. I couldn't. How do I handle this? So
yeah.
Sammy told me, stay out of it. We're almost done. Stay out of it. I saw her walk sideways one day, and I took her into the vet, and they found a large tumor in the back of her upper mouth, like her back teeth. It went up to her eyes and her nose, and they said it's inoperable. It's very aggressive. She has a week or so. And I was stunned. And she just said, well, now you know. I want to go home, and he wants to stay. So I took on all his things.
Wow.
Yeah.
What empathy. What an empathetic cat. What empathy.
Yeah, but I knew that he wasn't doing well. My dog, Griffin, was not doing well, but I didn't know that Sammy was ready to go home. But she was really excited. She said, we were grieving for her, and she was saying, I'm planning my party. Everyone is coming, you should see all the colors, and I'm planning it, I'm preparing, it's pretty soon. And I said, Sammy, what would you like us to do, and do you need help? And she was saying, I don't care, Darcy, I don't care. I'm going home, and I'm happy. And she said, you'll just know when it's time. And so one day she wouldn't take her pain medication, and she wouldn't eat, and I said, today's the day, and she said yes. And so we had to take her in and put her down. But she was joking on the way to the vets about how she was going home, and she was going to drop coins and flicker lights and all that. And it was kind of a strange situation. We were sad, but yet happy for her at the same time. And now she's a guide for us.
Wow.
Yeah, she comes in and she talks to us all the time as our guide.